Good evening, Nutters. Steve Wellings here on this Saturday evening. It's about 8 o'clock on Saturday, the 1st of July. You are all very welcome. If you're in the chat, make yourself known. I see somebody hanging about there. ABC. Shout out to ABC. Only one caller on with us so far. Hopefully a few more will join as the time progresses. It's Justin this evening. Justin was telling me off air there. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning about his one-legged uncle shooting coyotes out the backyard and getting chased on his kayak by cottonmouths. He doesn't live in the outskirts of Birmingham anyway. Justin, enjoying life out there.
Apparently my uncle's enjoying life. So, yeah, like I said, he bought like the Old West 6-shooter, that little holster, so he could like have one on each side, and we're just out shooting coyotes. But that's as country as hell. It sounds pretty redneck, but it is. But hey, like I said, the man's got one leg and he's on disability. He's got literally nothing else to do. So just let him have his fun. He's got nothing else.
Absolutely. Well said. Let him have his fun, everybody at home. If he wants to shoot coyotes, that is up to him. Shout out to Gabe Lewis as well. Reminds me of Gabe for some reason. I haven't heard from him in a while. Hope you're well out there, Gabe, if indeed you are listening. Another thing we were talking off air, boxing related, actually, before we get on to Canelo Charlo, which is the main topic of conversation for this evening. By the time people hear this, the fight will have already taken place. But give us your 2 pence worth, Justin, on Jared Anderson moving up. I think he's about 14-0 maybe. Supposed to be fighting Jan Kosabutsky, who had visa issues. He pulled out, as we explained last week on the pod. He's now fighting Prince Charles Martin. I don't know what kind of shape the Prince is going to come in, Justin, but do you hold out much hope for this one?
No, I hold no hope. I don't know. This is just Anderson a tick-over fight because he's not going to. It's one of those weird things. You're not going to learn anything. You're not going to. I mean, Charles Martin is going to offer absolutely nothing. Like I was telling you before we come on, either he's going to get smoked in the first minute and a half, or he's going to maybe hang on for 5 rounds, and that's it. I mean, the best he could hope is that he doesn't get knocked out horribly bad, that maybe they stop it, like jump in. But I don't know. Anderson's a weird one. Like, you can see he has the talent, but I don't know. I'm not sold on him like some people are. I think that he's pretty good, and once they split all the belts up, he'll probably take one of them, but I don't think he'll get lucky like Charles Martin did with a guy. I remember watching that. Remember that was on the old like Versus Network or whatever that was when that come on, and like Charles Martin was running around the ring like he had knocked him out cold, and like his whole family was celebrating. I hate when people do that. Like you didn't actually win anything. You didn't do anything. The guy just tore his knee. It's just like you remember when Terry Flanagan won his title because the guy's shoulder dislocated.
It was a payday, yeah.
Yeah, and you would have thought that he had just beat Prime Floyd. He was like crying, like you remember that. I was just the whole time. I'm like, my God, the guy was winning the fight, but he tore his shoulder. Like you didn't like go over there and pull his shoulder out and win the fight. That shit always just bugs me when people win because of injuries. But anyway, I'll get off of that. But yeah, this is just a stupid fight. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's the best. I mean, it's the best they could have gotten on short notice. So you really can't complain about that because at least it wasn't some like 300-pound random dude. At least Charles Martin will look good on his resume. I don't know. I really don't care. I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah, I think the reference you made, obviously, there to Glashkov, we were talking about this last Sunday briefly about is Charles Martin, if not maybe the worst heavyweight world champion of all time, certainly the luckiest. I believe that
he might be the worst. He might be the worst.
Do you think so? Because, I mean, if for anybody who doesn't remember, I think it was Fury, the belt split up. Fury had to drop the IBF, and then Glashkov fought Martin, ripped his knee out. Martin got hold of the belt and then basically sold it to Joshua. I think that's the way it worked out.
Yep. If you really go back in history, unless you try to dig really deep, every heavyweight champion before this would have beaten Charles Martin, I believe. I can't think of anybody that's worse. I remember y'all talked about it last week. Yeah, it's hard. You really have to like start really digging into people's records and like trying to find random people. But because like in the 80s, 70s, there wasn't any really weak champions then, like, terrible champions that won the 50s, 60s. Yeah, he probably is the top 2, definitely worst of all time.
Yeah, I suppose you could maybe go back to the likes of Primo Carnera. There was obviously, he was the ambling Alp at the time, technically not very astute, a big lump of a guy, very strong, big puncher.
He probably still would have beat him.
A lot of mob influence as well, though. Justin around that time, a bit ahead of the people that he beat as well. You still picking Big Primo over the Prince?
Probably. I mean, Primo was huge. He was a big guy for that. I probably still beat him. I mean, he probably still beat him. Like I said, I don't know. Those are one of those things. Like, I don't think anybody is going to be clamoring for a metaverse fight between Charles Martin and Primo Carnera for $20 on pay-per-view, like Roy Jones last night. He won. Roy,
did he win? Right, okay.
He 7th round knockout, and he looked, even in the metaverse, he looked horrible. Like, he had a gut, and like he just looked terrible. But like I said, I don't think that's a fantasy matchup that we're going to have a podcast about. Is Martin versus Primo Carnera.
No, everybody listening at home, if God forbid we ever end up in another lockdown and we do our fantasy fights, Primo Carnera versus Charles Martin, what would have happened in their primes?
2.5
rounds.
2.5 hour long on a Sunday. Who would have breaking down each guy's individual ways to win the fight?
Can I put Dave Allen into the mix there, please?
Primo Carnera versus Dave Allen. There you are. There's Danny Young throwing one in for us.
Sorry, gents.
No, you're okay. You're very welcome, Danny. How are you on this Saturday evening, sir?
Mate, I'm fucked out, looking for a handout, to be honest with you, mate. But,
as good as that?
Yeah, as good as that, mate. But yeah, I thought I'd jump on. I got the elders in the front room watching a movie, so I thought, do you know what? I'll jump on, have a chat with the lads. You know, better than the wank these days, isn't it? But yeah, anyway, sorry.
No, not at all.
Talk boxing.
Danny. Yes, absolutely. Talk boxing. Well, what we're going to talk about now, we're going to start off with you, is the fight that's been announced. Well, I'm not sure if it's been announced or nailed down, but it looks like it's going to happen. Canelo Alvarez, Danny, versus Jermell Charlo, not Jermall Charlo, Saturday, September the 30th in Las Vegas for the undisputed super middleweight championship. Undisputed versus undisputed, 14 pounds of difference. How are you feeling about this one, Danny?
It's the wrong brother for me, if I'm going to be completely honest. Yeah, why would I have to get this right? Jermall, isn't it? Jermall is the one at middleweight, right?
Jermall's the middleweight. Jermell is the undisputed 154 champion.
I would have rather Jermall than Jermell, and purely on the basis that it's, you know, more Canelo's kind of, not stock weight, shall I say, but you know what I mean. Like, we've seen him fight, you know, the likes of, like, Golovkin was at middleweight, wasn't it? I think it was the first one. Yeah. So, yeah, but the only thing that slightly deters me from this fight, much as some people are getting excited about it, I kind of go back to the kind of like the Tony Harrison fight, and yeah, I felt Tony Harrison did a good job on him that night. I know it was tight, but I think he did a good job on him that night. And I just think Canelo's just levels above that as well, even though he's had a defeat. It'll be interesting. Like, I don't want to shit on that. I don't want to shit on the fight at all. I think it'll be interesting and definitely one I'll be keen to watch. But I just think it was the wrong brother for me. It would have been better. Does it mean that he has to go through this one to get to the other one? Who knows? It does kind of like it. It poses the question, doesn't it? I suppose. You know, if he beats this one, does he to go up a weight and fight the other one? I don't know. Who knows? Is this going to be at? What weight is this going to be at? Is this going to be at middleweight, or is it going to be at?
No, it's going to be at 168, to the best of my knowledge, for all of Canelo's super middleweight belts. If anybody has heard otherwise,
they're saying some people said a catch weight like 165.
I heard it wasn't going to be a catch weight.
It's not going to be a catch weight. Then
well, that's what I read, but I'm not sure if that's true or not.
I mean, you got to give Charlo credit for going up. I mean, he's going to try. I think he's got more fighting than his brother does in him, so at least he's going to try.
Yeah, but I think that just adds another negative to the kind of like the proposed outcome of him trying to get a decision, because what is it now that I know Canelo's a name that everyone's chasing, but why are we having to sort of like get fighters to move up weights, come down weights, and all the rest of it to fight him? It's just like, there's got to be something. Like, again, look, the brother would have been ideal, because at least then it's like he's vaguely fighting in and around his, like, you know, his standard weight. But this just, you know, dragging someone up weight, I don't know. It just doesn't ring right with me. And I just think it's just, again, if this fight leads to better ones, then so be it. But yeah, I'm slightly kind of cautious about, look, Spence Crawford is the fight I'm looking forward to. This is a nice little added bonus, if I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Well, you mentioned something earlier, which I was going to ask you about there, actually, Danny. Maybe have Jermall return on the undercard. He's been away for about 2 years now. Canelo beats Jermell in the main event. Then he can fight Jermall. Built-in storyline, family revenge. Canelo beats Jermall as well. Looks great on the resume in the future. He's effectively wiped out the Charlo twins back-to-back.
That would make sense to me. But, again... I'm going to shit on that one as well. Inactivity, Steve. Me and you hate it, don't we? Like, we fucking hate it. And it just happens time and time again. Like, Jermell is out much more than Jermall. But, I mean, what are we saying? It's nearly 3 years since a guy's fought, isn't it? Or something like that?
Over 2 years, yeah.
Over 2 years since Jermall fought. By the time Jermell gets in the ring, it'll be 18 months as well since he last fought.
It's ridiculous. I mean,
and he's had 2 injuries.
Yeah, hand injuries.
Well, that's but you can't. Jermall hasn't had injuries as far as I know, has he?
No, he's been out with family issues, hasn't he? Trying to get custody of his children, apparently.
Yeah, they had a bunch of articles that he's been in court all the time because they're having a horrible divorce with his wife, and he's winning custody for his 7 kids or how many he's got.
Well, that's the best time to fight, mate. When you've got wife issues, mate, get in the ring and blast someone out over it. Don't bloody fight people in the courts. Fight them in the ring.
So when Canelo beats his brother, he's gonna be like Vitali, who always had to avenge his brother. So he needs to that's what he'll have to do. Come in.
But yeah, so again, right, that'll be fine. If it ends up being one brother and then another, and then that's a nice little, it's got a little backline story to it, and all the rest of it. Lovely. I'll take that. Still not the best on offer, but I'll take it. I'll take it with aplomb.
You are taking it with aplomb, Justin. You mentioned there Vitaly Klitschko. There are some similarities actually between the Klitschko brothers and the Charlo brothers, apart from the fact of them being brothers. Jermall's been off dealing with family issues. We know that. The WBC have let him keep his title for 2 years now, rather than upgrading him to some kind of emeritus champion, which I'm not a fan of. But in this case, it would have made more sense. Let the likes of Carlos Adames fight for the proper title. They did that with Vitaly as well, Justin, back in the day, didn't they?
Yeah.
Let him hold on to the WBC title for goodness knows how long before eventually elevating him. I think they should have done that with Charlo. Adames is the interim champion now. He's held on to it for far too long, Charlo.
Yeah, and it's you don't even hear anything about it either. They don't mention it. They don't mention do anything with it. It's just he's out. He has the belt. That's it. We're not going to talk about it. It's the WBC. I don't know. It makes you wonder either the money that's got to go around, because the WBC it's got to be getting paid to let him keep that belt. Mm-hmm. There's no way he's getting to keep it just because they're being nice and they're not making any money off of it. So that it wonders how much was it Uncle Al, whatever you call him, how much he's paying to actually keep it. But yeah, if you're out for a good reason, fine, but you shouldn't be able to keep the belt. I don't care what the reason is. Like you said, let somebody else have it. When you come back, you get the first shot at it to get it back, because you're the one that, you didn't lose it in the ring. Fine. That's the way it's always been done up until recently. Now usually, like I said, back in the day, that's how it was done. If you had a reason, fine, take it. We'll get an interim. You'll come back, get it down the road. And now it's you're right. We're going on, it's 2.5 years. It's over 2 years, but it's getting close to 2.5 years. And like you said, he hasn't even done a training camp. So he has to do a camp. He has to do all that. I mean, he could be looking at, you're right, 3 years.
Well, hang on, Justin. This could be perfect, because WBC could do their job and just take the belt off him and let people fight for it in the meantime. And then WBC can give him a WBC custody of the kids belt, because they'll make one up for anything these days, won't they? So
have his kids in diamonds.
Oh, his little
on the front of the picture.
Kids on each side of the
have the ruby, like the Azteca custody belt or whatever they call it.
You wouldn't put it past him, though, would you?
No, no. Hey, I mean, it'd be cool. I mean, I honestly I wouldn't mind that, because that'd just be funny. So that'd be kind of cool. If you beat him and win that belt, what the hell are you gonna do with it? You want
You get his
you know,
kids.
it's like, yeah, you got his kids.
you in custody of them. You're mandatory to look after them.
Right. So they've got like his ex-wife in the other guy's corner. Like you could really, you could sell that. People would
I'll
actually
tell you
buy
what,
that.
if that's the case, then Foreman needs to come back then, doesn't he?
The
How many
childcare
kids he got?
championship. Oh, flip me! I don't know.
Well,
Or called George as well.
But not Yuri Foreman because he's way too religious to get involved in anything like that.
Evander Holyfield, he's got a pile as well, hasn't he? Oh dear me. Justin, you mentioned earlier about catch weight. As I said, to my knowledge, there is no catch weight. So Jermell will effectively be moving up a couple of divisions to fight at 168. Canelo was a 154 fighter once upon a time. He's now a fully fledged bigger guy. We all know that. He's fought as highly as 175 pounds. That said, Charlo will have the height and reach advantages on the night. Justin, do you think that'll help him in any respect?
Yeah, I don't think the weight honestly matters because I think Charlo comes in like in the high 160s anyway, like on fight night. So he comes in about the weight anyway. And like you said, I really believe that everybody knows what's going to happen. Charlo has to fight perfect. I do believe he's just as good a boxer as Canelo. I don't care what anybody thinks. I think he has a really good ability and he could do a lot, but fighting Canelo and then the whole thing around that, he's not going to knock Canelo out, obviously. So he has to be perfect. And I don't think watching his fights that he's going to be able to go 12 rounds perfect. I don't think Canelo will stop him. But, I mean, it's one of those deals you hate watching fights knowing that Charlo will have to win at least 9 rounds. At least. And I don't think he's going to be able to win 9 to 10 rounds legitimately. So I don't think it's just one of those weird fights you're like, I don't know. It's just weird. I don't think he's going to win. And then, like I said, he has to be perfect to win. And Canelo, so.
Sorry, Justin.
No, you're fine.
Who's his best win, do you reckon? Is it what, like possibly like, I don't know, like Trout or someone like that?
Charlo is the king of the rematches, isn't he? Harrison, or then knocking out Castano, probably you'd say, because it was the undisputed fight as well.
I guess Castano, Harrison were his 2 best wins. Yeah, I mean, because those were good wins at the time. Yeah, those were good wins.
Was the first one a draw?
Yeah.
Castano won.
I mean, like, really, was it?
Oh, well, I thought Castano maybe.
I thought he won. Yeah, I thought he won the first.
Don't forget, Jermell was the first person he knocked out Erickson Lubin as well, who hasn't turned out to be great, although he takes risks. Lubin, I'll give him his dues.
I always thought too that knockout was great, but look how early it was. I don't think Lubin was just. I think he was cold.
Yeah, he's cold, caught him cold.
And he come in, and it was just one of those like probably never happened again. It was just the perfect timing, perfect shot. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those deals. That was a great knockout, but it was just you could always look back on everybody's knockouts and kind of pick them apart. But I always thought he just caught him right perfect. I mean, what was it, like 30 seconds? It's just
he led right into an uppercut, didn't he?
And also Charlo, if you look at his last few fights, he's not hard to hit either. Castano laid a lot on him, and so you figure Canelo is going to lay a lot on him too. So and I think Castano got to him a little bit, so Canelo could stop him. I mean, he could stop him late, but who knows? I'm just glad that Charlo stepped up and did it. I mean, I don't know. He just stepped up and did it. At least he's doing something. Look how many people now are like not wanting to do anything, not wanting to try anything. They're just sitting there happy to get by. So I'm glad at least he's going to give it a shot. He's going to get well paid. And if he wins, then my God, think about if he wins. I mean, he's on a different level if he somehow wins. So why not go for it? Who gives a shit if you get knocked out? Wow, you got knocked out by Canelo. You were up 2 weight classes. You can't lose anything. He absolutely can't lose anything. If he looks good, he wins. If he gets knocked out, who cares? It's 100% for him, perfect for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe Kennedy has jumped on there. Jermell Charlo has very little to lose. If he wins, he becomes a 2-weight undisputed world champion at the same time. You're gonna have to fit 8 belts around his waist and his shoulders somehow. Tell you what, it'd be remarkable, Joe, if you were to pull it off.
It would be amazing. I said it into the Nutters group that I wasn't too mad at that fight at all. I think it's definitely the better of the Charlos if you were to pick one of them to fight, rather fight Mel, who's been at least active, than Mal, who's gone through some personal issues by the sounds of things and just hasn't been fighting at all. So it's not Benavidez or Morel, so a little bit disappointed that we're not getting one of those fights. But if it's not one of those, I think it's as good as a replay, or as good as another option as there is out there. Battle of the undisputed, kind of sells itself, and I think we've mentioned it, like Canelo is not a big 168, and Charlo's a big 154. So I don't think the difference in size is going to be that massive on the night, and I think it's a good. It's a really good test of Canelo's skills at this age as well. People are saying he's on the slide and his skills are regressing. He's a bit of a plotter and he's a bit of a one-trick pony now. If that's the case, we'll certainly show that up. I don't particularly think that's the case. I think it'll be a really good showcase of two really skilled boxers. And it's a guy who's also kind of in his prime as well. So give Canelo his dues for that as well. I think it's I think I'm not too mad at the fight at all. I'm looking forward to it.
There's unsurprisingly no rematch clause in this, Joe, which is unfortunate for Charlo being the king of the rematches. He figures people out second time round for Tony Harrison, who beat him very narrowly. I thought Charlo might have done enough in the first fight, didn't get it. Beat him in the rematch by knockout. Excellent fight as it was. And then against Castano as well. Thought he had a lot of trouble in the first fight. He was definitely buzzed in about round 6. Second fight worked him out. Knocked him out, so there's not going to be any rematches here for Uncle Al. Stylistically, Joe, both are fairly low output boxers. Charlo, as we said, struggled in the first fight with Castano, who's a high-octane fighter. He gives opponents very little rest. Canelo has shown in his last couple of fights that he's throwing fewer shots, fewer combinations, setting less of a pace up at 168. These two guys aren't going to set the CompuBox numbers alight anyway.
No, but I think that Charlo has that kind of trigger quickness in his hands that might be at the cost Canelo trouble. He's also got a very good jab, so that could cost Canelo trouble as well. You saw with Bivol, it was the real basics that gave Canelo the issues that night. It was the jab on the right hand and setting off, and that's not beyond Jermell's skill set, not to the same level as Bivol can do. But it's he can still kind of play to that game plan, I think. So it does play into Jermell's hands a little bit, I think, and it's a risky fight stylistically for Canelo. But you just wonder whether the history of Canelo fighting at that weight will be a difference on the night. Whether the more telling hard shots will be landed by Canelo, and they'll be the ones that will swing the fight.
Absolutely. Shout out to James Windsor, who's joined us in the chat there. A good lad, James. Danny Young, you posed a question in the private chat there. If this is with the PBC and it's a 3-fight deal, which it is for Canelo, if it turns out to be Charlo 1 and then maybe the family feud, revenge, Charlo 2, who do you think will be fight number 3? Which I suppose leads me into my next question as well, Danny. What about the metaphorical losers, quote unquote, in this scenario? Tim Zhu has been waiting for his shot, seems like forever, against Charlo now, and David Benavidez, which didn't ever feel like it was that set in stone. We all wanted to see the fight with Canelo. It wasn't as close or as mandated as Zhu versus Charlo felt like it was. But what are you going against Benavidez, who was supposed to be fighting Morel? He's not fighting him now. He's supposed to be fighting Yildirim. Who knows what's going on there? Who will be fight number 3? Danny, do you think they're working up to the Benavidez fight? Because if he's having a 3-fight deal with PBC, they've got to fit in Benavidez at some point. You would imagine in that 3rd fight.
It's made for it, really, isn't it? I can't think of anyone else.
It's a duck otherwise.
Exactly. Joe's just called it out. It's a duck otherwise, because why would you not make that fight? It has to happen. Like, it really does. It's just like, for me, that's on a par with like I said, like Crawford Spence. Like, everyone wants to see it. Everyone wants to see it. Yeah. I mean, the Charlo question and the Tim Zhu one, I think it's an odd one, because obviously ideally you'd want them fighting near, in and around each other to then have that as the next fight. But because this is scheduled for, is it September? Is it, or
September 30th?
So yeah, it's like right late in the year. So realistically, you're not going to get Charlo versus Tim Zhu in before the end of the year. Like, that's not going to be in December, especially if he gets some licks on him. So that's a shame, really, because I personally, and I would personally prefer Zhu against Charlo rather than the Canelo versus Charlo, but shit happens. But
a lot of these PBC fighters, Danny, are once-a-year fighters now. I'd see Canelo fighting Charlo now in September and not turning out against till Cinco de Mayo, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and you wouldn't put it past it. You wouldn't put it past it, would you? Like, but then if that's the case, like if Charlo if the other Charlo brothers still in court by then, Cinco de Mayo against Benavidez, come on, like perfect. It'd be
That'd be
absolutely
brilliant.
perfect.
Yeah,
That'd be brilliant.
yeah.
Like, and everyone be buzzing for that. So yeah, like I'm just again, like we seem to be talking about the fights more than actually talking about the proposed fights. Actually talking about the fights that are actually made. So it's disappointing, but at the same sense, like if the Charlo brother's going to be tied up in court, then yeah, like I say, you just think, do you know what? You got a free fight deal. If Benavidez managed, if the Benavidez fight comes out, as the second fight, then you've got contractual obligations for a rematch. Then either way, and I'd like to see that because I think if the best Benavidez comes out, I think it's a tough night for Canelo. So that's my way. I'd like to see that. If someone's going to say to me, knife to throat, what free fight deal? What do you want to see? I'll have this as a starter for 10, and then I want to see Benavidez and then a Benavidez rematch. Forget the other Charlo brother. That'll do me.
Yep, 100%. Justin, wouldn't mind seeing that myself, to be honest. It seems like Benavidez he's obviously further along in his career than David Morrell, who was mentioned as well. He's only had a few fights, but something tells me Morrell would be an absolute handful for Canelo. I just think it's more of a hunch than anything he's done in the ring, apart from the fact that he likes to blast people out. I know he went late with the poor old Bosanuli, but even if they put Benavidez against Morrell, you would imagine the winner of that would be nailed on for this kind of Canelo shot. Whoever won that fight, you couldn't begrudge them the crack, but it seems like Benavidez has pretty much earned his shot now, I'd say, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, but I agree with it. You would imagine the winner of that fight would fight him, but who knows? I mean, that's what you would think would happen. But Morrell's good. Is he ready for Canelo? I mean, why not?
He'd have a go, wouldn't he? He would
Yeah,
have a go.
well, he would. I mean, he would give it a shot more than like what the last 30 people that fought Canelo have. I mean, overall, he would go for it, and he might be young enough and have enough power that he could get Canelo, or at least that would definitely shorten Canelo's career. That fight probably would.
Like Bivol almost, Justin. He'd be brash enough, I think, and naive enough, which is a strange thing to say. Like,
he wouldn't care.
I don't care who Canelo is. I'll go out and fight with him.
That's the way Benavidez is going to be about it. He just could care less what Canelo's done. So that's probably why Canelo's pushed it off so far, because he knows those two guys, especially Benavidez, are going to come right at him and do not care. Do not care. They're going to come and bring it to him. And I think Canelo's at the point now, does he really want to be in those kind of fights? Does he really want to be in a war? Because that's what it'll be. Those guys are going to try and just, Benavidez is going to get dirty. He's going to push him around. He's going to, because he's bigger than what Bivol was, and he's just as skilled as far as what he does. He's just as skilled. So, yeah, I think that's why they've pushed off the Benavidez. But since he signed with PBC, I think he has no choice but to fight him.
He's got to.
He has
can't
to
sign with PBC and not fight Benavidez. It's such a strange move.
Yeah, that's why you fight the small Charlo, because it's like you expect him to win, so you get one fight. So they get one fight out of the way. So you go ahead and take. You still fight somebody that people know, but you don't fight a guy that you should lose to. Then your second fight, like I said, that's the tricky one. But I think it's going to lead to Benavidez. I think he'll be the third fight in the deal. And the big key is who's going to be the middleman that gets there.
Yeah, that's the big question, Joe. Benavidez feels like the last fight for me. Maybe even the last fight to Canelo's career. Well, if he loses, I don't think he'll want to go out like that. But it doesn't feel like a fight you can have against someone like Benavidez. Like Justin says, with all the wear and tear, the amount of years Canelo since 15 down at 154, 147 has been in the game. You don't fight Benavidez and keep going. That'd be that's a hell and back kind of an affair.
Yeah, you're taking Anthony Realdum rematch after Benavidez.
Yeah, in Azteca Stadium.
Yeah, in front of 80,000 or whatever. Yeah, no, I think the balls on Canelo that we were able to talk about these fights where you realistically think they're going to come off as well. Fair play to him. But I think the Morrell fight, like you said, is probably it's a bit too soon now for Morrell. But I think down the line it might be a little bit too much for Canelo as well. If he does get beaten by Benavidez, I wouldn't see it. But if he beats Benavidez, it could be like another one that they dangle in front of him for big money. For me, Morrell, even though he's been in against limited opposition, he's just looked brilliant, and he's got such an offensive arsenal. He's also got that kind of Cuban style that's still defensively minded. So I think he's got he'd give fits to anybody. I think at the weight, and I think it's a little bit too green for Canelo right now, but I still think he'd give him a great fight, and I just think that would be maybe a fight that they'd have after Benavidez. But I think it's probably too much, assuming too much it would be Charlo too for the second fight as well. I think maybe we'd see Benavidez after Jermell, hopefully, and then maybe a Morrell fight. But that's just me maybe being hopeful. But I think it's a division that's really lighting up at the moment as well. It's got some good talent coming through as well. So good to see that we're talking about these kind of fights coming through, and that hopefully they'll happen now that Canelo's kind of seeing the light and join Uncle Al like we've been saying he should. And we were kind of pissed off that he chose the zone route with Bivol and stuff like that, but at least he's come back around and done the PBC route now. So give him his props for that as well.
Joe, quick word on Tim Zhu as well. Even though he is, I think he's a WBO interim champion or something, they'll say, he'll move up now and he'll fight for the belt if Charlo were to vacate and he'll have his shot. He'll be pissed off at that, I think, Joe. He'll fancy his shot as Charlo at all 4 belts. He'll not be happy at picking up fragments, I don't think, Zhu.
Yeah, I think you'd have to feel for Benavidez and Zhu that they're probably both deserving the shot next at Charlo and Canelo. Instead of facing the guys that are blatantly in line, they've kind of pulled a swift one and fought each other, and it is a good fight. Like I said, the merits are all there for it, and I'm not mad at it at all. But I do feel for Zhu and for Benavidez, and hopefully they get their shot eventually. But and they're both two really dangerous fight for Canelo and Charlo, respectively. Like, I enjoyed your discussion last week about Zhu. Like, he's a really exciting fighter and ruthless as well. And you can see why you might be apprehensive to go into a fight with a guy like that if you're Jermell Charlo, and maybe couldn't blame him for taking the money. That's probably dangling in front of him with the Canelo fight. Like, but hopefully they come back around and do those fights again. Both Canelo and Benavidez and Charlo and Zhu, because both of those guys have definitely earned it. And at least you'd hope that Benavidez might keep busy in the meantime. But like you said, fair play to Zhu for keeping busy in the meantime as well.
100%.
Sorry, Steve, can I just jump in there?
Yep.
Sorry.
Sure can. No, go ahead.
Just a quick one on that though. Just a thought, yeah. If Canelo gets his way with Charlo in this fight, does that make Tim Zhu's chances of beating Charlo, if that was to happen, a lot easier? Because he hasn't got age on his side, has he, the Charlo?
I worry a little bit about how long it's going to take Jermell Charlo to get into the ring after a Canelo fight, because it's going to be a massive money fight, and I could just see him sitting on a shelf for a year and a half with his brother. Like,
that's what I mean. So if he
holding up all the belts, and then eventually Tim Zhu fights for the WBO and Australia against whoever's next in line, and
that's what I mean. So like, if he gets an absolute pasting and then sits on his armchair for 12 months, and then that fight does get made, you've got to have Zhu as the favourite massively.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah. Because he'll keep busy at least, Zhu,
Yeah, that's it. He'll just take over. Yeah.
I don't know what happened to Charlo, Justin. I don't think I could see him maybe not going back to 150 horse. It's not like it's not like somebody who's up and down all the time as it is. I mean, he's out the ring now 18 months. By the time the fight comes around, he's not going to be rushing back to fight like Zhu, is he?
No, 160's a gaping virgin of the division as well.
He'll probably drop it. I wouldn't go back. He'll probably just stay up there. And he'll his brother. Well, he fight for his brother's belt if they ever take it from him. But yeah, I don't think he'll go back. I mean, because honestly, I think what Danny was basically saying was if he goes up, gets hammered, then he has to go back down to fight Zhu. I think Zhu will knock him out. I just think that's a lot on somebody in like a short period of time. And eventually, like you said, Zhu, it'll be at least a year. I think y'all said that. Charlo, it depends on how he looks. If he gets hammered, yeah, it'll be like a year or a year and a half where he's back fighting.
I think if he loses, no matter how he loses, and saying they're not going to have a rematch, say if he loses like 116, 112 kind of cards, I think the thing is about Charlo and the PBC, and I am critical of them for this, is that he'll fanny around for a year and then drop the belts, but he'll just hold everything up.
But you know what he'll say too?
Yeah.
He's not going to fight Zhu because he fought Canelo. He's past that level now.
Yeah.
Like he's like, why would I come down and fight a guy like Tim Zhu that nobody knows? I went with the best 12 rounds. So yeah, either way it goes, I don't ever see that fight with Tim Zhu. I think this pretty much seals it. He's never going to fight him. It's never going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Danny, give us your thoughts on Benavidez Canelo. I think Canelo will be taking that at the end of his career, because you can't go through too many Benavidez fights because he'll just keep coming all night. Dan.
No, I mean, obviously, I put a little message in our little private chat there. I think this could it could possibly be Canelo's swan song, these 3 fights. And if Benavidez ends up being the second fight or the third fight, I think regardless of the outcome, I think he might say that's enough now, because I mean, how many more times do you want to see him, move up and down just trying to get a half decent name to compete against? I know it's there, but I mean, the guy doesn't need any more money, you know what I mean? He's fought, his list of opposition has been, it's brilliant compared to some of the people that we do consider, some of the greats. It's fantastic, really. So I think this could be end of him, and obviously, as alluded to in the private chat there, I don't think Morel would take the Canelo fight at this point, because he could certainly be one of those people that could possibly fill the Canelo gap once he moves on. So I think if he just hangs it out and gradually moves up in quality of opposition, I think we could be looking at potentially, I'm not no guarantee, but potentially we could be looking at a Morel with numerous belts. So yeah, Benavidez for me, I think, I don't know, I think with the amount of work that Canelo's gone through in recent times, he's been you can only applaud him for how active he's been. I think a fresher Benavidez for me just probably just nicks it at this point. So
I think as well, Dan, I take your point. I wonder, though, whether Morel's mindset would say, I would rather crack at Canelo before he retires, win or lose, give a good account of myself, attach myself to his name, and then carry on fighting after, trying to pick up the belts, even if he is like, I don't know, 15-1 by that, or 16-1 by that point.
Yeah, I get your point, but like, I suppose, I don't know, like, I suppose then, if Benavidez was to do the job on Canelo, then that's the fight then Morel Benavidez is the fight to make. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think it's like Canelo's not the be all and end all of that weight division. I just think it's a case of like, it's either Benavidez or Canelo, and then Morel can slip in once he's been ticking over. But yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good stuff. It's all positive anyway.
No,
I think Joe levels, like,
yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
To the top. Sorry, I was just going to say, like, I think he's jumped, like Morel. If you look at his career, like he said, he's jumping through the levels pretty quickly, because he's coming out of that Cuban background. Like, so I think he's just going to try to get to the top as quick as possible, no matter who's there. If it's Canelo or Benavidez. To plant your point.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. And I think it's probably Benavidez or Morel at this point, Joe. I can't see Canelo fighting them both. So if it was to be, I imagine it's going to be Benavidez, Canelo. And if Benavidez knocks him off his perch, then we're looking at Benavidez, Morel next. I don't see Canelo fighting them both.
Yeah. Depends how the Benavidez fight goes, But yeah, I'd agree. I can't see it being a walk in the park. And like you said, it'd be a taxing fight either way. You couldn't imagine going to some Morel fight after that, yeah. But yeah, do you think the talk of going to Cruiser, all that sort of stuff's now quashed? Do you reckon that's all put to bed, and he's at 168 for the rest of his career? Or?
I think in and around there, or maybe catch weights or something like that. I think he's a very clever matchmaker, Canelo. He always does enough to keep people off his back. So what I mean by that is, ideally, I would have liked to see him gone over to the PBC, as you mentioned before, fight the Charlos, fight the Benavidez's. But he does enough so people can't criticize him. Like, he'd go up and fight a Kovalev. Oh, he's fighting a banger. He used to knock people out. That's 175. Yeah. This is a guy who started off such and such. Badu Jack talk now. Oh, he's not going to fight Benavidez. He's moving up to fight Badu Jack at cruiserweight. Unbelievable. He always does enough to keep people off his back.
But it was actually only at 180,
Yeah. Like, whether the fight's happened or not. Oh, Bivol, he went up to fight a guy like Bivol. They thought he was going to beat Bivol. He didn't. It turned out he was much too big and much too skilled for him. But you can't criticize him. Oh, you can't say he's not fighting Benavidez. He's gone up to fight Bivol and Kovalev and all this. And, like, you know what I mean? He just keeps people off him.
He is. He's a good master of spin. But I think, to be fair, I think I don't think he'll duck Benavidez. You know, I said it would be a duck if he went to PBC and had 3 fights and didn't fight Benavidez. Not stand by that, but I don't think he'll duck him one way or another. So
No,
I don't
he
think he'll let
can't.
us down. No.
Yeah. Right, boys. Final discussion point. We'll segue off Canelo into the big one at the end of the month, and I'll let you guys go off and watch the boxing. We've got DAZN tonight. We've got Sky Sports as well. I know everybody's
I know you're raging for it.
desperate to get onto that fight. So we'll get through this as quickly as we can. Right, Joe, unmute yourself. We'll go on to you this one. So I jokingly mentioned in the Nutters group that when Errol Spence destroys Terence Crawford at the end of the month, he could move up to fight Canelo. And this viewpoint is apparently being expressed elsewhere now. I saw it on News Now earlier. It's gaining a bit of traction. Is this a realistic fight, Spence against Canelo?
I guess if Jermell Charlo and Canelo is realistic and it's going to happen, then you'd have to
it's becoming a bit more realistic. Yes.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Because Spence is going to be at 154, I think, after the Crawford fight. You'd have to imagine, but so yeah, down the line, if Canelo or if Spence needs to cement his name at 168, and you know Canelo's in need of a paycheck, I don't know. It's tough to get what Canelo's. Well, I think he's definitely money focused, but he also is clearly legacy focused as well. So I could see why he'd take the fight as well. You know, it wasn't so long ago that Manny Pacquiao was up for the Errol Spence fight as well. So there's clearly a pull there about something about the Dallas Cowboys Stadium with Spence and stuff like that. It's definitely a big money opportunity. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's out of the realms of possibility, but probably a few years down the line at least.
Less than 30 days out now, Joe. July the 29th. Can't believe it's happening. Well, I'll believe it when I see them in the ring. Like I say, any big fight. What are your thoughts and feelings at this point?
Yeah, like yourself, I can't believe it's actually happening, and I will when they're on the way into the ring. But it's a great fight, and I've been to see Me Machine against Crawford with my brother-in-law, Alex, in Madison Square Garden. It was a great fight, and Crawford just turned it on that night. He had a bit of trouble with Me Machine's right hand at the beginning of the fight, and then he kind of just came to bearings with it, and then switched southpaw and really turned it on and got rid of him. And I love Crawford. He's an amazing fighter. He's just such an instinctive fighter, and he's got that dog in him, as everybody says. And I'm kind of a Crawford guy, I guess, what I'm getting to. So my allegiance out there, I think Crawford beats Spence, but I don't think it's a one-way street at all. I think it's as close to a 50-50 as you can get. And hopefully it's a really action-filled fight, and they both just kind of go at it from the start. I'm worried that maybe they might be a little bit tentative, a little bit too respectful, a little bit cautious to begin with, because it'll be such a big fight and so much going into it. But hopefully at some stage it'll catch a light. And the two of them, when they exchange, are really good fighters. We saw Spence hurt Sean Porter late on with a left hook in the inside. It was really, really nice, and Spence looks pretty comfortable fighting on the inside. And Crawford, he does most damage on the inside as well, particularly when he switches southpaw, and he likes to trade. So I think that the styles lend themselves to a really, really good fight towards the end of the fight, when they're kind of both loose and both comfortable with each other and both letting shots go and exchanging, combinations. So yeah, I can't wait for it, to be honest.
I think towards the end, Joe, will be the key point as well down the stretch, because Crawford does tend to start slow at times. He can't afford to do that against Spence, because Spence isn't maybe fireworks all the time, but he's very effective with that jab and body attack, and he's sort of very rudimentary at times, but really effective. And Crawford can't afford to give away too many early rounds, I don't think, and try and rely on the firefight at the end. Yeah,
you don't want to be going into the last third of the fight needing a knockout or needing a knockdown, because if he's lunging in, and Spence is good enough to be able to step off and pick him off and like dial up the points, like you said, and make it a comfortable points win. So yeah, I think Crawford definitely has to be quick out of the blocks. But I think that we talk about wear and tear and the question marks over Spence. He's not been as active as Crawford, particularly after the accident. You wonder down the stretch as well whether Spence has the gas. Now, he's shown himself to have a good gas tank going down the stretch, but I think there's been question marks in the past, and maybe more so now since the accident with the activities, especially. So it'll be interesting, very interesting going down the stretch, I think.
I think so. Danny, you mentioned you want to see the winner, Spence Crawford, going in against Stanionis, provided Stanionis gets past Virgil Ortiz on July the 8th.
Give the lads a break, for fuck's sake.
Next week, I think actually that one is. I fancy Stanionis as well, but I think, as Joe mentioned, Danny, the winner of Spence Crawford is going to be looking for those massive paydays, or at least moving up to 154, I would say.
Yeah. I suppose my only thoughts behind that is obviously Stanionis is a PBC fighter as well, so yeah, there's a bit more chance of that maybe happening. But yeah, no, it's funny really because I'm buzzing for this fight. This is Spence Crawford. It's great, and I think it's just, well, I just hope it is. But in my head, like, it's got that, like everyone absolutely roaring for the first belt, and them two just coming out, and none of this standing off. I can just see them both seeing each other in the center of the ring, just to kind of not like blow for blow, silly stuff, but like I almost feel like both of those are going to be like let's give it 30 seconds and see what this other fighter's got. Let's see what they've got.
They're very macho personalities, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't see. It's funny again. Joe alluded to it. Like it's almost like we do talk about more. We talk more about what that fighter's done outside of the ring than he has done inside it. And obviously, if you take that into account, Spencer's done a lot of stuff outside the ring, and Crawford has obviously done a lot of stuff inside the ring. So that really, for me, sways it into Crawford's favour. Again, inactivity, Steve, I hate it. And obviously, I know Spence had an accident and this, that, and the other, but don't piss around in supercars then, you know what I mean? But yeah,
Spence will be 15 months out the ring, nearly 16 months, I think, by the time they fight.
One fight in 3 years, I think. In 3 years, I think it is.
Is that right? My God.
So yeah, like that is super inactive. Yeah, I don't know. Like, to be honest with you, I actually give Spence his due. He looked pretty good against Ugas. So I don't know. It's going to be great though. It really is going to be great. But I think Crawford edges it for me at this point in time. To be honest, I'm one of these people that likes to see them on the scales before I actually make a firm prediction. So anyone out there that wants a prediction league, check him on the scale first, all right? But yeah,
the secret sauce, Danny.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, well, it's gone now, isn't it? I've blown it, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, yeah, Crawford, man. Like, I just want Crawford to win it and then go. I suppose, yeah, calling out all sorts of names. It'd be great. Like, just watching him move up, because I think he's got, out of the two, I think he's obviously his size and frame suits moving up more than Spence. You agree on that?
I'm not sure. I think Spence is right and tight at the weight too. He's a big old unit, like.
Yeah, I think Spence is definitely for 154. Afterwards, I'm not sure. Crawford's probably he can choose whether or not he wants to go up. I think 147 is probably Crawford's walking around weight, right?
Yeah,
or close enough to it. I think Spence has got a couple of inches on him.
I think, as you boys say as well, it's definitely a 50-50. I can only imagine it's because of the car crash and the inactivity, but I do see some funny takes, like Crawford blasting him out in 6 and stuff. I do think Spence is a hard man. Like, I genuinely do.
Steve,
it's not going to be a one-way. It's not going to be one-way traffic at all.
No,
I can't see a KO in this fight. I can see someone potentially going down, but I can see them getting up and carrying on. I think this is 12 rounds all the way.
Yeah.
I like the respect between the two fighters at the moment, like that they've shown today. There is a bit of spite in the talk, and they know they're out of the fight, but there's respect there as well.
I think they quite like each other, to be honest. Yeah. I think there's a respectful sort of friendship maybe going on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Have you seen the tongue-in-cheek from Errol Spence in that video when they were rating each other, and he just gives Crawford absolutely shit marks, where Crawford is actually doing it properly?
I didn't see that.
Have you not seen it? Like,
no.
I think it was like they were going like, I can't remember what they were like rating each other on, and it was like, like they were doing like speed and that, and Crawford was going, yeah, Spencer's got good speed, 8, like, and you got Spence going like speed for Crawford, oh well, 6, like, and you're like, you're joking, man. Right at the end, I'm pretty sure right at the end they mark each other with something, and I want to say Crawford gives Spence like 7 or an 8. Yeah. Overall, I think it is overall, like overall talent. Crawford gives Spence like a 7 or an 8, yeah, and Spence gives Crawford a 4. So
I
yeah,
haven't seen that now.
I have to check that out. I saw one where or Spence was asked what Crawford's best win was and what his best win was, and he kind of demurred on the answer, and just kind of gave a bit of a politician's answer and talked about how great the fight was and all that. And then Crawford was asked the same question. He's like, "I'll tell you exactly what it was. Sean Porter's both of our best fights." And it was funny that Crawford remembered that Spence hadn't answered the question and wanted to make sure that he was seen to be answering the question. So there's that kind of schoolboy stuff between them as well, which is kind of funny.
I think one thing which could play a part as well, I do rate Derek James as a trainer in the corner, and which might also play into the Charlo Canelo thing as well. Obviously, he can't get in the ring with him, but tactically wise, I think he's a very astute corner man. He works very well. He works things out during fights as well, Derek James. And I'm not saying he's, Bomac is decent enough, I suppose, definitely in Crawford's corner, but I do rate James. So I think that might be not an edge to Spence necessarily, but out of the corner team, I'd rather have Derek in my corner maybe. I don't know what you boys think about that.
Yeah, James for me is a match made in heaven for Crawford, because they're just perfect. Like, you've seen some of the fighters that have gone on tried to work under James, and it just doesn't come off, has it? So who was the most recent one? Was it Khan or someone like that?
Anthony Joshua was hooking up.
No, Bomac, you're thinking about Danny. You're talking about Crawford's trainer, Bomac, right?
Oh, Bomac with Khan. Sorry, yes.
Khan was training with him before the Cal Brook fight, and it didn't work out at all.
That's right. Yeah.
I think that Derek James is a better trainer than Bomac. I think Bomac and Crawford's more like a personal kind of.
Yeah, Crawford's a natural talent, isn't he? I think.
Yeah, he just needed a guide. He just needed to be guided along, kept away from the streets, But I think that Derek James is definitely he's a real calming presence in the corner. I think that's probably one of the factors that AJ probably works with him well, because I think AJ's corner in particular seemed like a pretty chaotic place last few fights, whereas Derek James, he's very much a one voice man, very simple instructions, keeps it really easy, and kind of relies on the talent of the fighter.
Let me take that back then, Steve. What I actually meant was, because I got names mixed up, that Bomac and Crawford are a match, whereas obviously you've seen other fighters work under Bomac and it hasn't worked out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, as you've alluded to, Derek James is he's very good. He's very good in the corner as well. I like when they stick a mic under him. It's just there's no pissing around. He's not a trainer trying to take the limelight. He's there for instructions and instructions only. So he's very good. Yeah,
I think it's a lot down to chemistry as well. He seems to work very well with Spence and Charlo. Whether he'll have that connection with Anthony Joshua, that sort of voice, that cultural connection as much as anything. I think he gets Charlo, he gets Spence, and they get him as well. And that it just happens. Same with Ward and Hunter. And sometimes you say, "Oh, I can't believe such a great trainer. It didn't work out with X fighter." And there's just no chemistry. They just don't respond. Different fighters respond to different voices in the corner sometimes, and match made in heaven happen, and otherwise they might not come off whatsoever in other cases.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, there is
Hunter in particular, Steve, right? Because funny enough, through work, I ended up meeting someone who was cousins with Tony Medioca.
Oh,
and he was trained by Virgil Hunter for a while, right?
Yeah.
And the cousin told me that actually the relationship wasn't that great. In the end, I don't know if he's still training them, but I think it's like you said. I think that Virgil was probably a bit like Bomac with Crawford. It was a long-standing personal relationship where you really know the person, you know exactly what they react off, and then you try to replicate that with other fighters. Super talented fighters coming out of the amateurs or whatever that just need something different to adapt to the pro game, and he's only got the experience of doing that with one fighter,
Absolutely. That is where we'll leave it, actually, boys. It's 8:55. We've nearly done the hour. Thank you to the gentlemen for joining us. We talked very briefly about Jared Anderson, Charles Martin at the top of the show. Then we went in depth on Canelo against Charlo and closed out with Crawford Spence. I imagine before Crawford Spence, we'll have another Nutters call and get some of the other boys on to give their points of view as well. Thank you very much to Joe Kennedy for jumping on, head of the Prediction League. If you want to get in on the Prediction League, it's patreon.com/boxing asylum. You can get into the Nutters group for the next one, which will be starting soon. Danny Young as well, who jumps in on the hosting sometimes. He is calming, reassuring presence around the Nutters group, and Justin as well, out shooting the Cottonmouths in North Carolina. Thank you for listening. Thank you for you to being a Patreon subscriber. I've been Steve Wellings. We'll catch you all again on Sunday evenings, if not before. Thank you and good.